And good evening, everyone, and welcome in to the large program. John Maddox, your host for Tigers Tonight. Appreciate everybody joining us here this evening, all across our platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Basically, if it's social media, we are there. Joined tonight, as always, the band is back together by the best co-host in all the land. We'll start with our northern office up there. Recently returned from the Great White North, America Junior, America's hat. Spent some time up in Montreal. Brian, how are you this evening, sir?
Doing good, doing good. Yes, I loved it up there. It
Hey,
was, what's funny to me, or it was frustrating at first, how slow paced everything. New York, that's where I live, and everything's fast paced. But their interstate system, I mean, it was like 45 miles an hour. I'm like, can we not get anywhere? But I didn't see any accidents or anything like that because everyone drives slow as snot. But no, it was a beautiful city. Loved it up there. I highly recommend anyone go visit there. And there was a lot of misconceptions. I was always told, Montreal hates like English speaking folks. They're very rude. I didn't find one rude person. Anytime I was there, when we went to the restaurants, I'd ask for an English menu. Sure, no problem. So that myth was busted for me anyway. But yeah,
How
it
long
was
a
great.
drive is that, Brian?
From me, it was only 5 hours. So for me, I can get to Montreal the same time I can get to DC. I'm right in the middle,
Okay.
and I caught the second half of the Memphis game. So yeah, everything was good. I loved it.
and it's time now for the favorite game of those who've watched Tigers Tonight for a very long time. We like to call it, Where in the World is Larry Marley? Larry, how are
I
you, sir?
am in Houston. I'm good. I'm at my hotel in Houston. I flew in this morning. Really rough flight day. If anybody that flies to Houston Hobby, I try to avoid it. I'd rather fly to Bush, larger planes, and for the very reason that what happened today is I'm in Dallas, catching my flight to Houston. Get on. I'm thinking, great. I've got a 1:30 meeting. It's going to be fine. They pull the close the door, and I'm thinking, great, we're on. And then they open the door, and here comes the maintenance guy, and you know where this is headed. You got to get another plane, and of course, I'm late for my meeting. So, heck of a day, but I'm here for this, and this is going to make my day better.
So the Tigers on Saturday, it started out. Um, Saturday was very interesting for a lot of reasons. Of course, Memphis picks up the 52-44 win. Uh, North Texas's first two touches went for touchdowns by DT Sheffield. I'm trying to think. He is, if not the fastest, one of the fastest players I've ever seen in person. We were trying to think if he's faster than Calvin Austin. But man, he was sudden. He got the ball and he was gone both times. The first time was a little handoff. We were trying to decide if it was a run or a pass, but it was definitely a little jet sweep handoff. And then the next one, he just got in between the zone and we took a poor angle and it was over. And it was 14-14 at that point. And I don't think any of us thought this would end up in a shootout, though. I think we all thought this game would stay in the 30s or so. But Memphis's defense, after that 150 yards they gave up immediately, they did kind of settle in a little bit. They ended up giving up 653 yards, which a lot of people were concerned about, and they didn't play great at stretches. They gave up a lot. They did a really good job, I thought, Larry, of getting Chandler Morris out of the pocket. Where they did a poor job was containing him. Once he got out there, he was kind of unbothered and could set and throw down the field. It was almost like Memphis got a great inside push, but then the outside guys kind of got sucked in too, and that's a problem.
So what actually happened was, if you go back and watch the game, this was actually a part of the game plan from Jordan Hankins. What he did when we saw the start of the game, we basically were lined up and we were basically exactly what you were saying, John, try to contain. And what he wanted us to do, he wanted to sprint out to the strong side and throw. And if you look at Sheffield had the one catch for 75 yards. After that, we held him to only 47 yards receiving. Okay. They were lining Sheffield up to the strong side. What their offense predicated on is he does like to throw on the run. So he likes to sort of do that little sprint out, sort of like to the strong side. We started zone blitzing from the strong side to flush him to the weak side, which is where he didn't want to go. Now, look, to his credit, he made some fantastic throws, and he spread the ball around to all his receivers. But this was if you watch the game, we actually were trying to flush him. Now, yeah, you do want to contain him on the weak side, but you have fewer players on the weak side. So, question, why would you blitz from the strong side, right? Because you want more players over there. Nope. We wanted him to go to the weak side. And that's exactly that. If you watch that stretch where we held them, that's what we were doing. And they had to adjust to that. And they really never the reason we did this was because his arm wasn't strong enough to go back across the field. And if you watch, for proof of this, the last play of the game, he couldn't get that ball back over the field, and we intercepted it. So that was I went back and watched the game, and that was Jordan Hankins. He actually started zone blitzing the strong side.
Brian, what were your impressions of the defense on Saturday?
It was up and down. I think when I rewatched the game, I saw the second half live and went back and watched the first half later on. I think the defense did a great job in the second quarter and third quarter, but the bookends, first quarter and fourth quarter. So I mean, it's just the matchups, the adjustments during the game. For me, I like the way Memphis kept battling. I mean, that's been all year. If they give up a lot of yards, the defense doesn't give up. You don't see the players. I guess for me, except for the Navy game, because I mean that was just a whole weird situation in and of itself. But for the rest of the games, they haven't given up. They continue to play hard, and that's what I liked about this. You're going to have these games, games that you don't necessarily expect to be high scoring, but end up being high scoring. And I mean, if it's a 50-something, 40-something win, Memphis will take it. I mean, obviously, Summerfield and Hankins will be like, oh, there's some things that we want to improve on. But games like this is only going to help you, further down, in the schedule. I know off air we talked a little bit of, the schedule is a little bit lighter till you get to Lane, but you can't afford to, relax. And I don't see Memphis defense doing that.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was just a little bit concerned there early that Memphis was struggling with North Texas's speed, but they did do a good job of this reminded me a lot of the Iowa State game where they let that quarterback just kind of Rocco just kind of basically go all out and just dared the running game to beat them. North Texas only had 75 yards rushing. And if you take away, there were two they had 208 yards rushing, but there were two really long plays in there. 124 of those were Chandler Morris's long quarterback run. Sheffield had the 75-yard run to start the game, and then Porter had a 30-yard run. So you take those three big plays out, and Memphis actually fared pretty well against the run. And then you move over to Memphis on the offensive side of the ball. How about Mario Anderson? 22 carries, 183 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have a long of 53, but you take that out, and he still had 133 yards rushing on 21 carries. So a very workmanlike effort. Brandon Thomas left in the second quarter. Kind of had a dinged up arm, but he's fine. He'll be back this week. I was really, really impressed with Demar Blankensee on Saturday. He and Kobe Drake, I thought this was kind of the performance we needed from them, especially, Blankensee with that long catch. And then Kobe had kind of a long catch there on that first drive that kind of got lost after Blankensee's long touchdown catch. But Brian, what would how would you grade the Memphis offense on Saturday?
In the A's, A minus, just a regular A. I mean, if you take a look at it, Seth Hennigan was accurate. He didn't throw an interception. I don't remember, and it may have been, but I don't remember a lot of dropped passes. Maybe one or two from memory. So in the running game, like you said, Mario Anderson, came out running, averaged 8.3 yards per rush. So I really like the way the offense played, and it's going to be, there it goes, it's going to be interesting again. But yeah, if they can, if Memphis offense and Memphis defense can play well at the same time, I mean, it's this team has the ability to just dominate. And with the next couple of games, they really have a chance to iron out any wrinkles that they have going into that Tulane game, because that's everything circled. I know, the coaches and players, it's all about the next game, the next opponent. But as fans and media members, we can take a look at the bigger picture and be like, some of these things have to and need to be fixed before you get to that game. Because let's face it, Memphis should win easily up until the Tulane game, and that's going to be for all their marbles. And we talked off air. You take a look at this AAC schedule. Army, they have to play at North Texas on November 9th. I can easily see North Texas win that one. If that happens, Army has a loss. You take a look at Navy. They still have to play Tulane. That could easily be a loss. So if Navy loses that game, they have a loss. And then you go to Tulane. If Memphis beats Tulane, you have three teams sitting at the top of the AAC, all with one loss. Or I'm sorry, four teams. Four teams, all with one loss. And then you start playing. Okay, who has the the advantage and who has the tiebreakers? And from my understanding, it would be Memphis and Navy again, playing for the championship. So there's still a lot to play for. The Memphis offense obviously has been great against North Texas this last game. I know I'm rambling, but getting back to it, an A.
So Larry, what were kind of some of your takeaways from the offense on Saturday?
It was a good and bad thing. Obviously, the running game was excellent, and we were able to control up front. I think we wanted to play keep away a little bit, and obviously they got 600 yards offense, so that didn't really work out for us. But we were very effective in the running game. And then when they came up, and I was texting you guys, they came up, we threw over the top. So our offense was very consistent. One thing that was interesting was we got almost nothing out of our tight ends. And I really thought Lamphere and Doyle would play a role in this. That seemed like a matchup problem for North Texas, but we never were able to get them the ball for whatever reason. They may have stayed in and blocked for running more. I don't know. I didn't want to. I went back and I was, when I rewatch a game, I do it pretty fast, like within 30 minutes. So I don't. Sometimes I don't catch all the little subtleties like that. But anyway, that was surprising that we didn't exploit that. So I thought it was a good and bad thing from the offense. Obviously, our offensive line, I think we gave up one sack. And I just thought overall our offense did what it had to do. If you'll recall last week, one of the things we talked about was, could this offense score when we needed it to, right? That was the question, because we hadn't seen that the previous 2 weeks. They'd just sort of been in a cocoon. Well, it came out of its shell, and it was a beautiful butterfly, and it scored enough points to win.
Yeah, Anthony Lamphere's only targeted 3 times in the game, and I don't think Brendan Doyle even had a target. So that was different. And I thought this also might be a game for a guy like Shorter, and he had the one big catch for 38 yards. Rock Taylor was just steady as Rock Taylor is, and Demar Blankensee, of course, the long touchdown. Memphis threw to 6 receivers. North Texas had 11 different guys catch footballs, which is insane. One note that kind of came away from this, I think that not to be discouraging, but I think the Caden Costa era at Memphis has probably come to an untimely end as he missed a virtual chip shot field goal, 39-yard field goal, and then Tristan Vandenberg came in and hit a massive field goal towards the end to push it out to a 9-point lead. That was, that's one of those things that or an 8-point lead. You can't overstate how important that field goal was, because North Texas then gets down, gets close, and if it's 49-44, that may change their play calling, but they knew they had to get a touchdown and two after that field goal. Vandenberg just comes in, knocks it through. And then coach said today that Vandenberg is, or yesterday that Tristan is the kicker going forward. So, maybe Memphis finds a way on special teams to figure this out. We thought Caden Costa might be the guy to figure it out, and then that didn't work. My big concern from the game offensively, I'm going to put this back up here. That little stretch from 5:46 to go in the second quarter to the 8:16 mark of the third quarter. I can't remember the last time Memphis had 5 3-and-outs in a row. Let's see, 6 minus 7 is -1. They had 4 yards during that entire stretch. The second quarter, they had the one 42-yard touchdown run after the turnover on downs by North Texas. Missed the field goal after a turnover on downs. I mean, North Texas really helped Memphis a lot with field position, too. You look at that, and those 5 drives are probably the most maddening because you start at your own 38, 44, 39, 20. I mean, you had decent field position, and you did nothing with it. Now, they closed touchdown, 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 field goal, which you like to see because both offenses kind of got back in a rhythm. But, man, just that, that little stretch. And, Seth talked about that, and he said you just have to just keep fighting. And while that's true, you don't ever really want to be in that spot to have to keep fighting through 5 consecutive 3-and-outs. I give the offense a B, and I know that sounds crazy when you score 52 points. But, guys, Memphis could have put up more than that. Like, they left some – and look, the coaching staff will say it, and some of it's coach speak. The coaching staff will say it. Seth said it. Mario Anderson said it. We left points on the field, and that's really weird. Now, Jeb, you haven't missed anything fun yet. We're just reliving the craziness that was Saturday. One thing I did ask Mario Anderson, one thing that Anderson has really impressed me with this year, it's one of those non-stat sheet things. He has done a tremendous job of picking up the blitz this year. And having that, I asked Seth about that too. He's like, man, if I didn't have Mario picking up the blitz, especially the outside blitz, it seems like, Larry, am I just like not really noticing? We don't get a lot of middle blitz. We get mostly teams come after us. They're coming from the outside. And I don't know if that's a matchup thing or just a scheme thing, but we don't really seem to be blitzed up the middle very often.
You saw Florida State do it some. But in general, in today's football, you don't blitz as much up the middle because that opens up the middle for wide receivers. You got so many 5-wide sets that you really can't send a guy up the middle. You have to keep your linebackers back because otherwise they'll go right over the top on you. So that's why you don't see, and we don't do it that much either because we come off the edge if you watch. So now you will twist up front where you'll have, a guy that twists around. You'll have your defensive lineman do some of that. But generally, you're right, John. They don't blitz up the middle. And again, it opens up that underneath. If you do, teams will throw right over the top on you all day, and they'll dink and dunk you for 7 yards.
Brian, one other thing back to the defense. I thought it was interesting that for most of that last drive of North Texas, I expected Jordan Hankins to bring the house. Like because kind of been his MO. And it looked like Memphis played a lot of cover 2, kind of shelled up until North Texas got down close, and then Hankins brought the heat. I'm always worried when guys kind of stop doing what they are. Like, one of the reasons I think Memphis's defense has been so successful is because they've been aggressive, right? Like I always say every week, the offense needs to match defensive aggression. But it just seemed like as we got towards the end of that game, maybe they were afraid to give up a really big play and give North Texas a quick score. So they just kind of let them work their way down the field. But once they got inside the 25 or so, Hankins went back to being Hankins and just bringing the house. But it kind of struck me a little bit as we kind of got away from ourselves, I think, a little bit there.
I also wonder a lot of it too is if North Texas would expect Memphis to be aggressive. So on occasion, Memphis may well, normally we're aggressive, but let's not be aggressive right now, just to try to outsmart, I guess the other side. But when it came down to it, Memphis defense stepped up when it had to. So. I think just a little bit of chess, going on during that last drive.
It's funny how, and you go back and you can watch 100 of these games, these wild mid-50s to upper 40s. It always comes down to one defensive play at the end of the game. Always. That's how they always end. It's almost never a last-second drive for a long touchdown that wins the game, and it's 65-58. It is almost that. It is almost always an interception going in. Like Chandler Martin picked that off in the end zone. But we had
a missed field goal.
Right. It's usually something like that. It's a stop of some sort that usually determines the end of games. We had a long discussion about this on the message board, and I've heard the fact that people have said that Memphis has underachieved this year. And that's mind-boggling to me because Memphis is 6-1.
Yeah.
They still have all of their goals in front of them. And I'm not picking on one or two. I mean, this is, everything I post, I seem to see this. I seem to see, the Tigers just aren't as good as blah, blah, blah. Memphis is 6-1, and everybody thought they would be 6-1.
6-1, yeah.
They just had 2 of the games mixed up, which we can go back to the tape. And I said in the beginning of the season that I was less worried about Florida State than I was Navy. And but we all, at the end of the day, we got to the same place. I don't think everybody thought Navy would be this good. I think that's it. And
their quarterback is Heisman Trophy.
Well, that's the Army and Navy's quarterbacks are the damn 2 leading rushers in the country.
Right.
Like, I can't remember the last time I've seen that. I think I saw a stat today that Army's quarterback has more rushing yards than Iowa, like the whole team, which I'm not going to pick on Iowa too much. Sorry, Brock. But I think, we have to kind of temper expectations a little bit. And just like I remind people when the NCAA tournament comes around and your team doesn't get seated where you think they should, it's not always about you and what you do. It's about other people too. And, if Memphis, there is a chance, Brian, to your point, you have a 1-loss AAC champion and you have Boise State sitting there with 1 loss. Boise State's going to the playoff. Why? They have a better loss than anybody else would have. And they have a Heisman Trophy candidate running back. So if it came down to Tulane, or not Tulane, because they have 2 losses, let's say it's Memphis and Boise State. I think it's Boise State. Fair or unfair, I don't want to debate that, but it's just not always about you and what you do. It's about what other teams do sometimes too. And
now I will say this.
If
Memphis runs the table, beats Tulane at Tulane, then goes to Navy and beats Navy at Navy, you got a case. Now, and look, I understand that Tulane's not that wins, but still, regardless, I'm not saying they're going to get in. I would just simply say that you can make a case.
Oh, no, you could.
Mhm.
But my rebuttal to that is, and I don't care what the committee sits here and tells us, Boise State has a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate on their team,
And
and
people will tune in to see that. Yep.
100%.
Right. This
And
is
then,
entertainment.
looking
This is
at it from
entertainment.
Boise, looking at it from Boise's perspective, they're probably going to have to beat UNLV twice. Probably.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, and
come on,
that
this is-
UNLV
this is
game
entertainment
will,
industry, folks.
and UNLV could beat Boise. Is that who they play
Friday.
this week?
It's
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah, they play
Friday.
Friday night. It's a huge group of 5 game. But, before we get there, Memphis has to take care of business, and Memphis has to do what Memphis needs to do to get there. And this, I think, was a step in the right direction. And, Sam and I kind of went back and forth about this on the message board about why does Memphis being so bad in the past matter now to temper expectations? Well, it matters because we know where we came from. So
It's context. Yeah.
it is context. And there's a segment of Memphis basketball fans that don't realize that Memphis had a basketball team before 2008. There's a segment of Memphis football fans that don't realize that Memphis had football before 2014. And I don't mean that literally. I mean in a general sense.
That were relevant.
That Memphis was relevant. And, you look at all this in context and you go, yes, Memphis has a shot to be in the playoff. But if Memphis doesn't make the playoff, if Memphis goes 11-2 this year and plays in the Military Bowl, is the season really that bad?
No.
When again, you don't expect, and I do want to touch on this whole Army thing, but when you don't expect Army and Navy to go undefeated, right? Like nobody predicted that. I don't even remember what Army and Navy were in the
Well,
poll.
they're not going to go undefeated because they're undefeated in the conference. Yeah, they probably will. I mean, they
Army's
could.
already played 6 league games. I was looking at that today. I was like, what?
Mhm.
They only have 2 conference games left, right? Because we play 8, don't we? Doesn't the AAC play 8 or they play 9? Anyway,
They have 3 left. They have North Texas, UTS. Oh no, just 2. Yeah, in UTSA. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting that Army Navy game is not.
it's not. Yeah, they've already played 6, which is insane to me. But, well, there's a really dumb guy that has said that from the beginning of all this. And I'm gonna say it's still true. I'm
I don't know.
gonna say it's still true. We'll see. I mean,
I don't think Josh ever had as big a win as the one in the Liberty Bowl. Now you could argue that Iowa State didn't want to be there and all of that, but still they went out and they pummeled a Big Ten team.
that's undefeated this year.
You're right, it's undefeated
with the same core. I mean, so I
don't think Josh ever had a win that big. Ever.
I just think people need to not because expectations are good, right? And they come from success. That's how Memphis has high expectations. They've been good.
Right.
Yeah.
But as part of
All
that,
right.
you have to remember that it again is not just about you. Like it's not always, from my business perspective, some people just book travel on their own. It's not about me. It's about, as somebody said, releasing the outcome. You go out and take care of the things you need to go out and take care of and let the chips fall where they may. You go back and you look at Justin's teams, Mike's teams. So we'll skip the Larry Porter era. Tommy's teams. There were some eggs in there, y'all. Like there were some absolute dog crap games in there. Say it was 2004. Memphis went to Cincinnati and just flat out got their butts handed to them and had no business losing that game. Mike's team at Tulsa had no business being in that game, let alone it coming down to a missed field goal. And then Memphis, of course, this year with Navy, it happens. Teams have bad days. But it's a little. My other thing is, it's just a little early yet to say, oh, well, the season's a bust. And not that a lot of people are saying that, or Ryan Silverfield sucks and needs to be fired. If Memphis goes 11-2, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like that just, I just, I don't know. It gets so frustrating because I've said this from the beginning of this year too. Memphis fans are just going to have to become accustomed that Ryan Silverfield is going to win games differently than Mike Norvell did. And Mike Norvell won games differently than Justin Fuente. And
my argument for the last, all right, so I was on this show for one of those shows. I made the argument last week that he literally, well, you and I had this conversation, John. They looked at this and said, we don't have to do anything to win this game. I'm not going to get anybody hurt. We're going to just play this game. Let's say that Ryan had gone all out against South Florida. Okay, just gone all out, and Seth gets hurt. Let's just say that. Let's say he said, "I'm going to put my foot down. We're going to score 48 points on South Florida," and Seth ends up getting hurt and is out for the season. Okay, there's no reason to do that. And I look, if you're one of those that, hey, style matters and style points and all that, then God bless you. But John, you and I have been harping on this since we started this. Right?
Yeah.
Number one, right. And you want more over here than you got over here. And if you do, at the end of the year, that's what it's all about. And I'm going to tell you something. In January, nobody's going to give a flip that they scored 21 points against South Florida. Nobody's going to care. They're going to look at the record. And
my buddy Brad kind of said it best. He said his dad always told him playing golf that at the end of the round there aren't any pictures on the scorecards, just numbers. And I just want people to remember that and understand that. And I certainly. Saturday was much more entertaining than the last 2 weeks. But, Ryan Silverfield said post-game, he said, if I had to win and Seth Echo, if we win every game 2-0, we win every game 2-0. And I'll take that 100 times out of 100. So, Memphis, and I just say 6-1's better than 5-2. Ask North Texas who feels better this week. 6-1 or 5-2. So we're going to take a quick 20-second. It does not matter. So we're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we will get into the upcoming game against Charlotte. Thanks for joining us here on Tigers. And Eric did want me to say, if you saw the first slide there, Eric did want me to mention that there is a chance of an isolated shower, but it's not his fault. We probably won't. There's a cold, not to get too deep, but there's a cold front coming through that may trigger a shower or two, but we probably aren't going to get any rain through the end of the month. So hopefully here's another dry Saturday coming up, 11 a.m. from Simmons Bank. What do they call it? Is it the Sim or the Hole? The Liberty Hole? Is that what we're going with right now? Memphis takes on a Charlotte team that is struggling. And since they don't have anybody here to hear it, they have the biggest meathead in the league for a coach. I think he's funny, I guess, like Bill Fogarty. I think he's funny. Like, I think he's folksy and down home. He doesn't annoy me the way Missouri's coach does. He's just hokey, and that kind of plays okay, I think, guys, when you're winning. But when you're not really winning, that whole hokey act just doesn't seem to play as well, to me anyway.
Like Josh's act of I don't drink, don't smoke, all that stuff was great, at first. And then when we weren't winning a whole lot, it just sort of became, shut up, go out and win. We don't care. I don't care if you smoke a pack a day and drink, You know
Yeah.
what I mean. Like at some point, it just becomes just win, baby, and yeah, the suspenders and all that.
So Charlotte comes in with a record of 3-4 overall. Actually, 2-1 in league play. They have played Rice and East Carolina and Navy so far. So they haven't, and Navy just absolutely cleaned their clocks on Saturday by a final score.
That
of
game
50.
was over by the first quarter. I mean, I was watching the score, like ticker thing Saturday morning. I was just sitting there going, "My God!" I mean, every time I looked up, Navy had another touchdown. I mean, I forget what the score the first quarter was, but it was like over. It was crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. Here's the first thing that concerns me about Charlotte. The big thing, of course, it's all about me and what I want.
Right.
3 hours, 20 minutes, 3 hours,
Test.
23 minutes. We can hear you there, Brian. 3 hours, 33 minutes, 3 hours, 6 minutes, 3 hours, 48 minutes, 3 hours, 25 minutes. They played a 3.5 hour game against Navy. How does that happen? How do you play for 3.5 hours against Navy?
You give it 51 points. That's how you do it. But I mean, because the clock stops when they're scoring touchdowns every 3 minutes. But I mean, here's their defense. And I haven't. I'll be honest. If I've watched half of Charlotte football, I don't think I did. I think I watched like maybe a quarter. It was their defense is slow, at least what I saw of it. So, I mean, it looks like, if Memphis, the question is going to be, can Charlotte score on Memphis's defense? I mean, that's where this game, you're going to see real early if this is going to be close or not. I mean, if Charlotte comes out because their quarterback is sort of a multi-dimensional guy, he runs. But they really don't.
They'll have a backup this week. Their starter got hurt and he's out. I still think he'll play, but Max Brown, the backup, is going to start. Coach Fogey announced, I don't remember how you say it, but announced today that Max Brown was going to get the start on Saturday. So this will be the second time in 3 weeks Memphis has had a backup quarterback.
Right.
Don't really know anything about him. He's thrown, he's played in 3 games. He's 37 of 75 for 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, averaging right at 173 yards a game. Deshaun Pirtle is their quarterback, but again, he is not. Right. It's unlikely to play. He finally got out of his he was in a sling, and I think he's out of it now. Max Brown has 28 carries for 69 yards. He's running 9 times a game for 23 yards. So Brian, this is one of those things we talk about. Memphis has been preparing, although I guess it's good to know on Tuesday, which is why I'll admit I've kind of fallen into the trap that coaches have gotten into. I wouldn't announce who was going to start. It would be the dreaded or on the depth chart. I don't know that I would announce on Tuesday who's going to play on Saturday. But so you do have more time to prepare, but he doesn't have a ton of stuff on tape. So that's kind of the catch-22. In the past, Memphis has had a penchant for making guys look really good, although against South Florida, again, another case they didn't really have to. But this game, I'm not scared. This game doesn't worry me because I just think Memphis is substantially better than Charlotte is. Memphis is far better than they are. I was much more worried about North Texas. But, to me, Brian, the question is this a 24-7 game, 38-17 game, 62-7 game? What does Memphis do in this spot when they've got the next week? You've got not UAB. Who do you have the next week? You go to UTSA the next week,
UTSA.
which is another.
You got
no.
There's no bye week, right?
No, they go there. Okay. The next bye week is after UAB before Tulane. So to me, Brian, it's which Memphis offensive unit shows up Saturday? What do they put out there? How much do they have to put out there? And it's also the same true of defense. How much of the defense does Memphis have to show Saturday?
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those games to we'll see how the players, I guess, react. Are they going to just go through the motion? Can the coaches get the players fired up for this game? Because just on paper, I mean, Memphis should be able just to walk in, walk out with the W, but you're still going to have to get motivated somehow. You're still going to have to take Charlotte serious, and it's hard to take them serious because of how bad they've been. I mean, they are, it's going to take the way I see Charlotte is the way I viewed Memphis back in 2010, 2011 is just, they don't have, many players at all. In my opinion, the coaching staff is not much of a coaching staff at all. So yeah, just which Memphis team shows up, it should be the one that shows up and just dominates. I mean, this should be a dominating victory offensively and defensively. So I mean that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a mistake-free game, just a clean game that you can work on your fundamentals. We should be able to see some backups and get some playing time in there. But we've seen it before where Memphis plays a team that they should beat handily, and it's not so easy. So we will find out.
Is Larry, would it be fair to maybe say, and not that this is bad, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, that Coach Silverfield is a good enough, like that's good enough, coach? Like that's we've done good enough. We don't have to do nothing fancy, nothing, extra. If we do good enough, we do good enough.
I think his philosophy is, and it took me a long time because on this show we were talking about what kind of team are we? What kind of team are we? I think Ryan is the kind of coach that can score if he has to. I mean, he's willing to do that. But if he doesn't have to, he's not going to just, I mean, if he figures out you can't score and he can run on you, that's exactly what he's going to do. And he will keep doing it all day. And if the score ends up being 28-3 and it's the most boring game you've ever seen, then that's just how it ends up. And so I think he really feels this way. There's no reason for us to go out and do crazy stuff if we don't have to. And the downside to that is that you will keep teams in a game they shouldn't be in. And that's the downside. So, and we've seen that in the past come back to bite him. So what I would like to see is Memphis get up 31-10, 31-13, late in the third quarter. And then if you want to pull back on, okay, we're good, then that's fine. Sort of like what happened with Troy. Like if you go back and look at the Troy game, we got up and then they scored a late touchdown to make it sort of, respectable. And then that was the end of the game. That's what Ryan is. That's exactly what he is. But the problem there is you really need to step on people's necks when you can, and you've got to do that. And that's something that has come back to bite him in the past.
If you don't do things when you don't have to, it makes it harder to do those things when you do have to. 100%. That is absolutely it. So let's see. I'm looking at Charlotte's history. Game is 11 a.m. It is on ESPNU. Again for the second straight week. So let's go
30,
240. I'm gonna hate myself. 2:53 on Saturday afternoon. You will look up Brian, at the Simmons Bank Liberty Hole Memorial Stadium scoreboard, and it will say,
It will say 45-10 Memphis, and I think it may even be that Charlotte gets those 10 points in the fourth quarter. I think the defense will really shut the lack of 49er offense that they have. I just think Memphis really dominates. They need to dominate. I think we'll finally see a Memphis team really dominate a conference opponent like they should. But because it is Memphis, I give Charlotte 10 points. But yeah, 45-10.
I'm going to say 38-13. I just think Ryan's not going to run this up. They're going to get a lead, and you're going to see him just stick with the run. They're going to run it once they get up, and that's not his style. I mean, we haven't seen Ryan just go out and hang a big number when he doesn't have to. So 38-13.
I've got 28-10 for all those same reasons. I just think, Jeb said Anderson may crack 200 yards. I don't disagree with that at all. I didn't look. Charlotte's run defense is not that great. And this is a game where, I think Seth throws 20, 25 passes, and that's probably good enough. North Texas ran 101 plays on Saturday, which I think is the most this season. Charlotte's 11th in the AAC. They're giving up roughly right at 180 yards per game. They're pretty much 11th in everything, and I just think that they're going to struggle with Memphis's speed. I think that's where Memphis has a big advantage, is speed and size. And I just think Memphis wins. But again, I just don't think it's a game where Memphis just comes out and just, full blazes. This is a game where they'll probably get a defensive touchdown, or they'll get a special teams play, or I don't think Memphis needs to do a lot this week to win. Frankly, I think they'll need to do more next week to win. Next week, I don't like that spot. I don't like that you're going to UTSA, but we will deal with that next week. But I think Memphis wins, but I think it's just one of those games that Memphis just doesn't have to do a ton to win this
And
week.
Seth Hennigan, I think, is one touchdown away from tying the record, two from breaking it. And if he gets 300 yards, he'll be in the top 25 all time in NCAA career passing yards.
Which is crazy. He passed Brady White as the winningest QB in Memphis history last week. So, I just think Memphis wins. This is one of those games where Memphis is clearly the better team. I do agree with Jeb and Larry. Tight ends have to be more involved this week. This is, I said this about Middle Tennessee, but maybe this is the get right game. This is the game where the offense and the defense finally kind of come together and figure this thing out. And, my concern is if Memphis doesn't just blow the doors off of Charlotte, people are going to, keep ramping that, Memphis is disappointing. And I said last week that Memphis needed a win over a good team. Well, they got one. North Texas is a good team. I told everybody they were a good team. People didn't want to listen, but they're a good team. And now the next step is crushing bad teams. And, I think Memphis has a shot to do that this week. Will they? Who knows? Because, again, it's just not the way Memphis plays. So
I want to add one thing before we go off, and that is that Memphis became bowl eligible. And there was not very long ago at all, that would have been the lead story of this podcast, okay? That Memphis is bowl eligible. Now we take that for granted, and I'm glad that we take that for granted, because that shows how far the program has come. Bowl eligible for what, the 12th straight year, Brian? 11 straight years. There are people who are almost driving that have never had a year where they don't remember a year where we weren't in a bowl. So I think that I just think it deserves to be pointed out.
I posted on Twitter, longest streak in the G5. Memphis joins Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and Clemson as the only teams since 2014 to win 60 or more home games. If I'd have told you on October the 22nd, 2013, that over the next 10 years, Memphis would have an 11-year bowl streak and would be among Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Michigan as winning the most home games over a 10-year stretch, you would have had me committed undoubtedly. So,
No doubt.
all right, so stay with Tiger Sports Report all week long. Brian will have some good analytical stuff over there, and we're working on a couple other things. And it's we're getting to that point of the year where we're going to have basketball and football kind of going at the same time. It's a lot of people's favorite time of the year. Homecoming this Saturday at the Liberty Bowl. I'd be remiss if I did. I'm sorry, at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium if I didn't mention that. It's time for all the alumni to come back. There will actually be alumni band, but I will be up in the press box as usual, performing my duties as the voice of the mighty sound of the South. So get a chance, come out to Liberty Simmons Bank on Saturday. It's going to be a beautiful day. I'm a fan of the 11 a.m.s. Some people aren't. I mean, I don't tailgate anymore, really, so
Right.
get that
We're
perspective.
too old for that.
But hey, I like the 11 a.m. because then by good Lord willing and the creek don't rise by 2:30, 3 o'clock, you're done for the day and headed to the house and get to watch all the
With a win, hopefully with a win, and then you get to watch all the other teams. And by the way, last weekend was also one of my favorite weekends because I got to see either Alabama or UT fan bases meltdown, and it is glorious. Anyway, leave it at that.
So for the best Cocoa hosts in all the land, Larry Marley and Brian Moss, this is John Maddox signing off, saying thanks for joining us here on this week's Tigers Tonight. Have a great week, everybody.